which is unfortunate. But hey, we gotta talk about the good and the bad.
As a journalist,
yes, it is our duty.
It's my duty.
What about the ugly? If that was bad, if that wasn't ugly, what about the ugly?
So the ugly. Hello and welcome to every edition of the Tabletop RPG Talk Show. I'm Jon.
I'm Jesse.
And we're back.
We are back.
In a slightly different format, but you know what?
Are you sure?
It's, well...
This isn't your basement?
You're in a box over here, right?
Oh. I guess so.
Or are you over here?
I'm over here.
You're okay. You're over here. Yeah. So we're not in the same location, but that's okay. We still love tabletop role-playing games, and we're still going to talk about it.
Yeah.
So
that's what we're good at.
Really changed. So today for our Loot the Body, we are going to be taking a look at Frontier Scum, which is a Mork Borg variant, taking place in the Wild West. So if you need more Mork Borg action, we'll take a look at this at our Loot the Body segment at the end of the episode.
Speaking of Westerns and cowboys and the like, we've got the good, the bad, and the ugly of tabletop role-playing in 2024 for our random encounter. We're going to talk about...
through the year.
Yeah, we're already into summer. We're going to talk about what's been going on this year and sort of the state of the game in tabletops of this year.
Excellent. And of course, our morale check where we go over the news of the day. But first up, Jesse.
That's me.
What's up? What's new?
A lot. Way too much for just a quick couple minutes here. But I'll keep it simple. I'll keep it to my most recent Kickstarter backing, which I'm sure many people who are watching this have heard of. But if not, it was the Crooked Moon folk horror book for 5th edition. This Kickstarter ended maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And it raised over $4 million, which is
real money.
Insane for a tabletop book. But it was put together really nice. They had cool ads that had nice music and animations and stuff. And it was very sort of Baba Yaga's house in the forest and like a dark circus type of feel. It was very horror, very folky. Drew me in. I was like, okay, I got to check out this Kickstarter, and it was $20 or $30 for the physical book. I was like, heck yeah. Cool. And so did a million other people. So
wow,
I'm really excited. They've been keeping up with that pretty regularly, giving updates on stuff that they're adding because there was so much support. It's going to be a lot bigger of a project than we had originally thought. So we're going to get a lot of goodies. So I'm excited for that. Hopefully by the end of the year, I'll get my hands on that and we can take a look at it.
Cool.
Jon?
Sometimes when things get successful by surprise, that ends up making it take forever.
Yeah. It could be another year, but I'm hopeful that it'll be at the end of this year, but who knows?
You said it was Crooked Moon folk horror?
Yes.
I have not heard of that one. I'm gonna have to check that out.
It was fantastic. I think they have a bunch of free stuff that you can get too, sort of little bits of samples and things. They've got unique character stats or bestiaries and things like that. So
I'm assuming it must have good art.
Oh yeah, it's got a really 5th edition vibe in terms of graphic design and things like that, but it's definitely twisted slightly, and the art style is very unique but uniform across the whole project, which is really cool because sometimes with Kickstarters you might get a bunch of different art styles sort of clashing, and as somebody who enjoys games like Mork Borg, I really like the art and things like that that come with it. How about you, Jon? What's new?
Well, so what's new is I have been, focusing a lot actually on music lately, and my love of music and my love of tabletop role-playing games has come together. And so I actually I have a new band called Unicorn Dogs.
Okay.
So check it out on all the streaming platforms and on Bandcamp.
A little bit of self
A
promo.
little bit of self promo. But we wrote a couple songs for the role playing game Against the Gloom,
Ooh.
which is a role playing game about sky pirates who form a band
Okay.
and go from floating island to floating island, putting on concerts, and their concerts actually push back this green gloominess that sort of is pervasive.
That's fantastic.
Sort of, think about the slime in like Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
how
yeah.
that would recede. So it's that kind of idea. It's obviously a sort of an analogy for mental health.
Sure.
Right, and the idea that music is a great way to to push back depression and anxiety
Sure.
and all that kind of stuff. So it riffs on that, but it's you're in a punk rock band as a sky pirate, and you put on a concert, and you kind of see how good your concert
That sounds
and
fantastic.
how much gloom you push back. It's wonderful. It was very inspiring. So I wrote 2 songs like the next day.
Whoa.
Sent them off to the company that's putting out the game, and they liked it, and they said, "Yeah, we're working on a mixtape
That's
that we're going to have
fantastic.
for songs inspired by Against the Gloom." And so, actually, if you go to Spotify right now, if you go to Unicorn Dogs, those are the only 2 songs that we have up right now. So you can check out 2 songs for the role playing game Against the Gloom, and if you want to back the Against the Gloom game, there is late backing available on Kickstarter.
Nice. It's still up for late backers.
Still up for late backers. So
Nice.
check that out. It's a really great game. It's definitely light beer and pretzel. I don't know that it necessarily lends itself well to a campaign, but definitely a killer one shot. And I could imagine playing it, once a year or something like that. Kind of getting the band back together.
I think in a previous episode, it could have been off air or wherever, maybe at a table, you had talked about playing maybe even in a Mork Borg game as like a bard or something, where every spell that was cast was a line or the title of a song from a certain artist that you were trying to be.
So it was. I remember exactly what you're talking about. It was it was an X crawl game, which is a variant of Dungeon Crawl Classics.
Sure.
Right? And the bard, all the spells were Barry Manilow songs, or used Barry Manilow lyrics,
Sure.
stuff like that. And I think my character's name was something like Fanilow the Bard or something like that. But yeah, I don't talk about it very often, but I was raised on Barry Manilow, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
So my sense of, melody definitely comes from.
It seems like
the man who writes the songs. So.
It seems like this Against the Gloom would lead like really well into like that sort of humor at the table.
Oh yeah. And when I wrote the songs, and then we recorded them, I was pulling inspiration from like 80s cartoon themes. So I was thinking about like my favorite, cartoon theme songs like the Gummy Bears and Mask and G.I. Joe and all those Thundercats, all those wonderful cartoon theme songs. So I tried to channel that.
Nice.
So I'd love to hear what anybody thinks about those 2 songs. Like I said, they're up on streaming right now, and Unicorn Dogs recorded a 14-song full-length record that will be out later this summer.
Nice.
So stay tuned for that.
It's time for the morale check. Our morale check is where we take a look at the news of the times, and we are going to stick with the most recent times because that'll be much, much easier. I did just pick up, literally today, it came out maybe about 2 weeks ago, this new D&D book, Vecna Eye of Ruin.
Ooh, it's a beauty.
It is absolutely gorgeous. Of course, I had to get the alternate cover because I'm a sucker for alternate covers. And I'm like, I only own alternate covers of the ones that exist, so like I can't get a regular cover now.
Sure.
And they're
It's
the
too
same
late.
price, but it also supports a local shop, so I'm happy to do that. But anyway, back to the book. This is actually a pretty interesting book. I just got it today, so we can't really delve too much into it because I don't know too much. But it is a campaign book designed for level 10 through level 20, which is the first time that's happened in, 5th edition. They've done things like one shots or like mini campaigns that are meant to be like, oh, if you've got a group of characters that are at level 14 or whatever, you can play for 2 sessions or something. But this is a campaign designed for you to start at a higher level. And I did read the first couple pages. Does have some rules on like leveling up your characters to get to that level, or what to do if they're level 11, if they're slightly over leveled. Like they do have some like fail safes in the book for that. But it's almost, it feels like a heist, not maybe a heist, but like a chase movie, because you're like chasing Vecna through different realms, assuming you get to level 20 and you can fight him at some point. But they make references to a bunch of the different planes. At the back of the book, there's a bunch of like best hits when it comes to like bad guys, like Loth is in there, Tiamat's in there, a bunch of like the heavy hitters like Mordenkainen, Tasha, Lady Silverhand from Waterdeep. There's a bunch of these
Really is
major,
like the greatest hits.
It feels like, because I mean, this is I believe this is the last actual campaign book for like 5th edition.
Sure.
So it seems like a good end cap. There's still going to be a couple more 5th edition books, but this feels like the greatest hits, and they're bringing back Vecna, and they're slowly trickling in Greyhawk. So I'm curious to see, like Strahd is in here, so I'm curious to see which planes they hit. But on a later episode, we'll probably deep dive into this in a Loot the Body.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah, we're in the lame duck year for 5e, so it sounds like a almost swan song or something like that. Or if there's one box they haven't checked yet, it's more high level stuff, more high level adventures, and then why not do some plane hopping and hit all the big bads?
I was hoping for Dark Sun, but alas, no 5th edition Dark Sun. Well, 5th edition WotC Dark Sun.
Yeah. I'm afraid I don't think there ever will be official Dark Sun ever again. I think 4th edition is going to be the last time we say that. But of course, you say that, and then it'll come out next. There is if you're on Facebook, there is a Dark Sun group out there.
Oh, really?
And they did a old school essentials, a BX conversion of Dark Sun.
Nice.
That's available for free on their Facebook group. And I actually got the file from that and sent it off to Lulu and had it printed in an A5, size hardcover.
Nice.
So I actually have old school essentials Dark Sun, as a unofficial fan edit.
That's cool though. That's cool.
So that's the newest version I've seen. Well, in other news, if you're looking for a different dragon game, there is a game out there called 13th Age.
Okay.
And 13th Age is coming out with its 2nd edition.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun. And we're about every edition, so why not?
yeah. Got to talk about the 2nd
Age
edition.
of 2nd edition, or the 2nd edition of 13th Age, whatever. But so this game, it is a dragon game, and it's made by the makers of 3rd edition and 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh.
However, it's as if those games went in a narrative direction, believe it or not.
Sure.
And so 13th Age is a much more narrative-based, fantasy role-playing game.
Okay.
It uses backgrounds instead of skills. So if you're someone like me who really doesn't like skill checks, right? This uses backgrounds, which I think is pretty cool. It's another way of sort of saying like you have this cluster of stuff, and as long as you can connect a reason why, right, then give it a roll. I think that's a great way to do it. It also focuses a lot on your relationships with various icons in the realm. So similar to like what you were talking about with the sort of greatest hits of the big bads, all those big bads would be icons in 13th Age, and you would have a strength of relationship with those people for good or for ill.
Sure.
Right. And then you can bring those up as story points in the game,
Which might help you in some random situation.
Absolutely, right. Give you a roll or give you a bonus or what have you. So it's an interesting take on the dragon game.
Yeah.
Right now on Kickstarter, it actually just ended successfully. I'm sure there's going to be late backing, but they were kickstarting a player's handbook and a game master's guide.
Sure.
And so you're classic there, but it seems to have an appeal for folk who really aren't looking for a crunchy game, that are looking for a narrative game, but still want to play a dragon game.
Sure.
That's where 13th Age would come in. So I'm looking forward to bringing that to the table sometime soon and seeing what all the hubbub is about.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what exactly is going on with that game, and curious to know what they've changed. Like at some point when the second edition thing comes out, maybe we'll pick up some and sort of review it and maybe get a chance to test it, to play it, and then look back and see what has changed, because I've never heard of this game before today.
Yeah. Well, and I have heard people say like, oh, that's from 3rd edition, or that's from 4th edition, or they stole that from 5th edition, right? And it's like, well, yeah, but they also in some cases were the creators of those of those gaming ideas, and also, so what?
Yeah,
like
if it worked.
Yeah, and if they're taking it in a different direction, just because you recognize it, I mean, I guess that's bonus points for you or a gold star or something. But like, it doesn't take away from, if it's a good game.
You're right, so. Right. Next in modern news, I have a bit of this is a controversial thing. I know a lot of hardcore fans aren't too big on this because WotC is doing a lot of crossovers lately. Especially when it comes to Magic the Gathering, but in terms of Dungeons and Dragons, Vecna, and in turn a brand new character from Greyhawk, have been released as downloadable content into a game called Dead by Daylight, which is a game where one person who plays like a killer, like Michael Myers or Scream, or in this case Vecna, goes against 4 players who are like battling against each other, trying to escape.
Okay.
And it's a very like, it's a horror game, but it's like a party game. It's not so scary. There's a Friday
the 13th game that's like that, right?
Yes, and a Leatherface one, Texas Chainsaw. It's a very popular style of game, but Dead by Daylight is like the most generic and the most popular, and they do crossovers. Like they did a crossover with Stranger Things. They have Michael Myers, so like they've crossed over with a lot of IPs.
Okay.
And they just released Vecna, and so every time they do a licensed character, they bring in a map that is specific to that genre, and they brought in this like mage tower with a dungeon underneath it, and I felt so bad for my teammates because I'm trying to play the game and we're trying to win against the killer, and I'm just looking around at the dungeon that they've created on this map, and I'm like, oh, I know what that is. Oh, this is terrifying. This is a dungeon. I could see myself as a D&D character walking through here and like fighting bad guys, and it was so awesome. And Vecna looks so cool, and it's just such a great crossover, and I'm just beyond hyped about it.
Hey, if a good crossover is a good crossover.
Yeah, and like if you've never tried Dead by Daylight, and maybe you've heard of games like that, Vecna is like definitely the bridge to get you into the game, because he's a super fun character to play as, and he has like all D&D referenced abilities, like his hand and his eye are in the game, things like that.
I do think Magic has gone too far.
Magic has gone too far, and I think that
with the crossovers,
this warrants its own gigantic discussion. but they have sold out completely. There's a joke because there's a Assassin's Creed crossover with Magic the Gathering that's like it sold worse than, I believe it sold worse than Homeland's Magic the Gathering, which was a set from like 1995.
Oh, I know Homelands,
which was received horribly, and
it had no good cards in it.
No,
like, literally 0 cards that were useful. None.
It was so bad. There was a format in tournament play where you had to play at least like a certain amount of cards from each set that was released in the past like year or so, and people played like the best card in Homelands, but it was still terrible. It was like Serrated Arrows or something.
Yeah,
whatever. But Wizards of the Coast has gone way too far. But this one is pretty good. They've crossed over with a couple other like smaller indie games. Like they added Dritz to a couple games. They've done some like mobile game crossovers, but this one by far is my favorite.
Oh, you know what? I'm not thinking of Homelands. I'm thinking of Fallen Empire.
Fallen Empire is okay. It's bad, but it's okay. It's got elves in it, and elves are good.
Oh, well, I mean, at the
time, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was a turd.
It was. The price of packs versus how many cards you got in the pack was awful. There are stores that still have both sets, like on the shelf. Yeah, for like the same price because they're not worth anything.
They're not worth anything. Yeah. They're not worth the paper they're printed on. Yeah. Well, and finally, to wrap things up here with our morale check, our friends over at Bloat Games have been kicking out lots of Old School Essentials BX rules supplements. They did a Dark Places and Demigorgons Old School Essentials book. They recently kickstarted a We Die Young, which is their if Dark Places and Demigorgons is the 80s, We Die Young is the 90s.
Oh.
And it's steeped in the Vampire the Masquerade, werewolf, World of Darkness sort of tropes.
Yeah.
But also grunge music and the 90s. So
okay.
That's
like
We Die Young.
Deftones and like Buffy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, definitely Buffy. So that's We Die Young. But they've got now another Old School Essentials rule book coming out. This time covering World War II. And it's called Operation BX. And it's actually a collaboration with the gaming company that put out a game called Operation White Box, which used the White Box D&D rules to do a World War II game. So this time they're doing a World War II game with BX, with Old School Essentials. And Bloat is putting it out. So I backed it. There's going to be 2 core books. One is going to be just sort of the basic rules, World War II, tanks, guns, that kind of stuff. And then the second book is if you want to Cthulhu it up.
Ooh.
If you want to add a supernatural.
Ooh.
So you don't have to.
Sure.
Right? You can just use the core book, and there's nothing supernatural in the core book for Operation BX. But then there's the supplement book. It's called Into the Dark. And it is going to have then all the ways to add cultists, Nazi cultists and spells and magic and Cthulhu and demons and that kind of stuff to your World War II game. So Bloat is still doing good stuff.
That's fantastic.
And still a game company worth checking out. So Operation BX from Bloat Games just launched on Kickstarter, but I'm sure there's going to be a late back. And if not, I mean, it'll be on sale soon.
Yeah. Maybe we can convince him to come back on the show.
Oh, absolutely. Eric's a great guy. Yep.
A question for you, my dear viewers. What D&D crossovers would you like to see in the future, if any? This is a hot button debate, and I enjoy the crossovers that have been happening. It's actually gotten me to play a couple other games that I wouldn't have normally, or at least sort of try them, like mobile games. But I really, really enjoyed the Dead by Daylight one. Been kind of playing it every day. Let me know down in the comments, or you can send a note over to everyeditionrpg@gmail.com.
Yeah, you can also find links to all of our socials at everyeditionrpg.com. Links to Twitter, Spotify, Facebook. I mean, you name it. A whole cornucopia of social medias just waiting for you. And when it comes to crossovers, I just want to say this. I feel like the Magic Dungeons and Dragons crossover
Right.
was inspired, was a long time coming. It was something that people really wanted. And I think a lot of the crossovers now are not actually things that people want.
I agree. Like
Right?
there are some things, like just recently they did a Fallout Magic the Gathering crossover.
Right.
And it wasn't something that I wanted until I saw it. And I was like, oh, I like both those things. Like there's a couple things here that I would enjoy, or like the Doctor Who one.
Yep.
But I was never like, oh man, I wish they'd make a Doctor Who Magic card.
Right.
But I have always been like, oh, I really wish there was a Dritz Magic the Gathering card.
Sure,
Or I wish there was more art for me to show players at the table. And here I could just open a pack and show you.
Yeah, or like, the novelty of one or two My Little Pony cards,
Right.
or, one or two Transformer cards.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, that'll get me to buy a pack, if I can get a Transformer card, and I might buy a pack or a set that I wouldn't normally go into just because there's, one or two cards or something like that are
Sure.
fun. But these whole sets of, I mean, even if I'm a fan of the franchise, I don't necessarily associate it with Magic.
Right.
It just the D&D one was such a slam dunk. I mean,
And
it was,
the alternate arts that look like
that was
the
great.
monster
It was
manual.
so
Oh
good.
man.
It was so good. It was so good. And I agree with you. I think they could do that annually. Right?
Yeah.
I don't
Especially
think
for the
they
50th.
can overdo it. But they're overdoing it with the other crossovers, I think.
Agreed. Let us know what you think.
Everyeditionrpg.com, everyeditionrpg@gmail.com. Thanks a lot. It's time for a random encounter. Today's random encounter, we're going to talk about the state of tabletop role-playing games here in the summer of 2024.
It's awful. Don't play tabletop games.
It's the worst.
Play video games.
No, I mean, really, this is a umbrella topic, so Jesse and I can shoot the breeze and catch up on all the stuff that we've missed out on the last year talking about. But in true every edition format, let's do some good, bad, and ugly to kind of keep things focused here. So let's start off with the good.
Okay.
The good of our current moment here in the summer of 2024. So we are in the lame duck year of 5th edition. We are also celebrating the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons.
Doesn't feel like it, but yeah.
And so I know that there is a celebratory book that's coming out that is sort of a reproduction of the original, white box rules of Dungeons and Dragons with commentary and stuff like that. And that's all well and good. The most interesting announcement, though, I think, has been that the next iteration of Dungeons and Dragons is going to be set in the core books in Greyhawk,
Which is nuts.
and I called it.
Yeah.
Literally called it. So I don't want to toot my own horn, but right. And I called it when we started this show. Jesse and I would sit around and talk about, in a couple of years, it's going to be the 50th anniversary. What do you think they're going to do? And I said, they're probably going to roll out Greyhawk because it's the first, it's the first campaign setting. It was Gary Gygax's world. It's a great excuse to roll that out. And there's plenty of stuff. And we had a chance to interview the Greyhawk Grognard on one of our last episodes. And I asked him, I said, hey, I think this is what's going to happen. And he's like, no, that's not going to happen. They're never going to touch my Greyhawk. I mean, yeah, of course they are. Of course they are. And actually, I think it's a smart move because the truth is, at this point, Greyhawk, whether you like it or not, is more generic
Oh yeah.
than the Forgotten Realms, right? And so by having their, sixth edition be set in Greyhawk, they're sort of returning it to a baseline,
Mm-hmm.
right? And all the different IPs associated with the Forgotten Realms, then that people have grown to love through fifth edition, they can sell as separate books.
Yeah.
Duh. Like, right? They already got you hooked. And so why would they give it to you in the core book when they can sell you a setting book, or they can sell you a player's option book for the world that you want to play in? This all makes perfect sense.
Do I need a Forgotten Realms setting book? No. I've got a million books.
I don't. Yeah.
Will I buy it? Absolutely.
See? Yeah. No, it's very smart. So it's, Greyhawk is the most generic right now, so you can reset,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can also sell the Forgotten Realms stuff separately.
Also seems like a good jumping on point. Like, it's a 50th anniversary, a brand new edition. There's sort of like this. I know when I was working at the comic shop, a sort of lead up to, like, they announced the next edition's coming. So like, what do you do with new players and people trying to get into the game in the meantime?
Yep.
Like, people aren't going to want to buy a player's handbook or the triple pack, and then 3 months later the next player's handbook comes out, and I have to buy a new one. So it's kind of like a good, hey, you're new, you've been meaning to play, here's this thing that's easy to get into. There's nothing crazy going on that you really have to like catch up on.
Right.
It's a good sort of starting point. Good reset.
Well,
point.
and if you did do that, like, let's say you did buy the triple pack right now for the first time, and then the new stuff is coming out. Well, your old triple pack is set in Forgotten Realms, and your new stuff is set in Greyhawk. So it is offering you something new.
Right.
And something that wasn't done in fifth edition. Right. So that's more of an incentive to get that book. It's a brilliant move. It's why I saw it coming a mile away. The thing I didn't fully understand until this moment was, oh yeah, they can sell you Forgotten Realms stuff separately, like they used to.
Right.
Like they did for second edition, like they did for third edition, like they did for fourth edition. That was one of the selling points of fifth for me, was, oh, finally Forgotten Realms is the home world, because that had always been my favorite, right? And it was a lot of people's favorite, right? So, finally the best fantasy campaign setting is the home world for D&D.
I wish they would have done more, though. Like, thinking back, there's so much of it was focused on the Sword Coast, which is where everything happens.
That's where, yeah.
But there's so much more with the world. And, like, a couple of books hit some other points, like Salt Marsh and, like, Tomb of Annihilation. Like, some other places, they go a little bit to the west or a little bit to the east. But there's still so much to do in the world. And we're like, okay, we're leaving. See ya. And I'm like,
So the other thing that I think is going on right now, and again, staying with the good of our current moment, I do think that if you're an OSR player right now, if you prefer old school Renaissance style dragon game, right? I do think the OSR community has really coalesced around a couple games. And I think if you're looking for a more modern OSR style game, I think there has been a coalescing around Shadowdark. And I've seen a lot of Shadowdark stuff at conventions coming up, a lot of Shadowdark talk online and on Facebook. And so if you're looking for a modern OSR game, I think things really have coalesced around Shadowdark. And I think if you're looking for a classic OSR, I really do think things have coalesced around old school essentials. And returning to the BX style of play and all its different variants. So while there are a lot of OSR games out there, there's also sort of an idea that there are sort of, I think at this point, those two pillars,
two pillars, yeah.
of the OSR that really, if you were going to put out an OSR supplement or adventure, you would want it to be compatible with either of those or both.
Sure.
Right. And I think ultimately that's a good thing, right? There are other OSR options out there. You know, there are plenty of great games out there if you want THACO, if you want to play a first edition or second edition, you know, style game, and you're looking for new content. You know, Hyperborea is your game.
Yeah.
You can't do better than that. But you know, the OSRs, it's quieted down a little bit. So I think that's ultimately a good. I'm glad.
Maybe going into the con season over the summer, we'll get some new news about some OSR stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'm headed off to Origins again in a couple weeks, and you know, I'm going to be playing Hyperborea. I'm going to be playing my annual second edition AD&D game that I look forward to every year. There's also like I said, a lot of Shadowdark, like a lot, and which is great. You know, and it's going to be an interesting con. We'll get to that with the ugly coming up a little bit. But anything else anything else good going on right now?
So
Jeff?
I don't know
do you think?
exactly, and I don't want to get too bogged down with like things that we, you know, would have talked about on the show.
Yeah.
But the Bladerunner RPG, tabletop RPG, did come out.
So good.
And it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
And I haven't been able to play it. I can't wait to try it.
I played it last year at Origins.
Oh,
it's awesome.
I'm so jealous.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And I would say the one strike against it is it really does seem that like it lends itself pretty heavily to prop usage.
Ooh, okay.
And so that, which is great, but that also means then that you have to buy a boxed adventure.
Right.
It doesn't really lend itself to like I'm gonna run a game off the hip, off the cuff.
Right. You can't sit down around a campfire and play it.
Yeah. So it's going to be a game that, at least the way it seems right now, it's a game that requires prep. It's a game that requires time and money investment.
Right.
But might be worth it.
Interesting.
So there you go. That's my quick take on it.
Kind of makes me want to play it more.
It's good. it's so worth it.
It looks cool.
It's really good. So I played the introductory adventure.
Sure.
Right. That comes with the box set. And it's fantastic. It was so good. Very impressive. And they came out with another boxed adventure. So like I said, it's got a lot of props. But I think that's part of the sort of like mystery angle.
Yeah, very mystery, they're trying to engross you in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the designs are so cool. The maps are cool.
Yep.
Oh man. Anyway,
Dice are good.
Yeah. Free League. This is fantastic.
Free League, yeah. Oh, yeah. Free League is still the good.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're still killing it. They're still killing it. All right, you want to move on to the bad?
Let's do the bad.
Okay. So the bad. We're in the post OGL debacle world.
Yep.
Right. Which is a good thing, and that whole thing ended up the way it should. D&D's in the Creative Commons. It's great.
For the most part, it's like what 95%.
Yeah, it's great. It's a good thing for, you know, what essentially is folk art and storytelling.
Yeah.
You know, so that's great. I still feel like there are some people that can't get over it, like just can't get over it, and that I'm tired of it. Like, and so the thing that really gets me is the gaming companies that in the moment in the OGL debacle, when it was happening, were like, oh my God, we got to scrub clean, right? Our, you know, relationship with the OGL.
Yeah.
And are essentially, now that we're like a year out, re-releasing their books, and they're like 99% the same, except they're going to be removing the OGL.
Sure.
I'm not excited about that. That doesn't make me want to buy your book. Like, come on. And at the end of the day, it's so unnecessary. It is an excuse for re-releasing your core books.
Yeah, yeah. Instead of working on literally anything else.
Yeah, you're looking for an excuse to re-release a player's handbook, just like Wizards of the Coast is looking for an excuse. So stop it. Like, either make something new and exciting, but like just putting on a new coat of paint.
It stinks when it's like that transparent too.
Yeah. All right, and I'm going to call out the company that.
Go for it. Heck yeah.
Because it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, we can be critical of the things we love.
When you love something, like I love things, if to really express your love, you need to call it out, right?
Constructive criticism.
That's right. It's actually disrespectful to ignore when someone's headed down the wrong path.
Right.
Okay. So Troll Lord Games,
of course.
Castles and Crusades Reforged.
Unfortunate.
I don't care. I have and I'm a Castles and Crusades fan, and I have every Castles and Crusades book, and I love Troll Lord Games, and I could not care less about an OGL free Castles and Crusades. Whoop-dee-doo. And unfortunately, as a fan of Troll Lord Games, they've been re-releasing their stuff now for a long time. Like, it's been a while since they've done something new. So
sort of writing on the wall.
That to me is bad, right? That to me is not doesn't show the health of a company or a game. If all you got is just putting a new cover on something or looking for an excuse to re-release your player's handbook and not really growing your game or growing your base or any of that.
Yeah, like if they put out a new supplement and, then they put on the tagline of, hey, this is free of any OGL stuff, but it's all 100% new content. Like, great, whatever. You can have that win. If you think that's great, that's great. But if it's just re-releasing content again and nothing's really changed, maybe the cover is slightly more blue, like.
Well, it doesn't matter because it's all in the Creative Commons. So
right.
even if it's really worthless. It's really, and in some cases, like if they're changing the nomenclature, they're changing the words of things just to have different words. Come on, stop it.
It might be a detriment for the future if they keep that up. Yeah.
Totally detriment. When things are like when things are starting to coalesce, right, around certain games, and you're left there, in a year-old argument that nobody cares about. Like, come on, I'm disappointed, and it's not the only gaming company that's sort of stuck in like they made a decision a year ago and are doubling down on it.
Yeah, they have sunken their cost.
Yeah,
and
that's bad.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
It's bad. It doesn't excite me. It's not something I'm gonna want to look at or buy or talk about on the show. Except apparently to be negative about it. So,
which is unfortunate. But hey, we gotta talk about the good and the bad.
As a journalist,
yes, it is our duty.
My duty.
What about the ugly? If that was bad, if that wasn't ugly, what about the ugly?
So the ugly is tied up in our current moment of inflation. Right?
Yeah.
And groceries are more expensive. Everything's more expensive, right? Role-playing games are more expensive. Records are more expensive. Everything's more expensive. So one of the places where I've noticed that there's a pretty big change happening is on the convention scene. And it looks like, at least at my favorite convention, annual convention, which is Origins, there were a lot more pay-to-play games.
Sure.
Like a lot. Like, I was still able to sign up for a whole 5-day convention's worth of quote unquote free games, but I wasn't able to play everything I wanted to play.
Sure, because certain games were gated behind
Certain games were
cost.
gated behind a $6, $10, $20,
Sure.
pay window. I get all the arguments.
Mhm.
I do. I get all the arguments. But I'm a fan, and I already bought my convention ticket.
Right.
Right. And I'm not getting, I understand if there's prize money involved, right? Like if I'm in a Magic tournament or something like that, and there's prize money, or I'm going to get packs or something like that, that I pay an admissions fee for that. But if I'm playing a tabletop role-playing game, I'm not getting the core book.
Mhm.
I already paid for my admissions to get into the convention. I just don't feel good about paying another $6. And especially me, like, I fill my schedule. I am
Yeah.
playing
You're playing every day,
dawn
all
to
day.
dusk. I would, if I did that with pay options, I'd be paying twice as much to go to Origins.
Right.
Easy.
It's the same as a hotel cost.
And so, that, you say, oh, it's only $6 to play a game, but I'm playing, 4 or 5 games a day.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's that, and I'm not traveling by myself. I'm bringing my son, right? And he's playing as many games as I am. That really starts to add up. I get the arguments. Hotels are more expensive. The people that are running the games, arguably deserve, some form of compensation.
Yeah.
It used to be that the compensation was a free ticket to the convention. And in some cases, you run enough games, you get a free hotel.
Yep. Or some kind of food or whatever.
Right. Something like that. I get all the arguments, costs are up. That's why it's not necessarily bad. It's just ugly.
Mm-hmm.
It's just ugly. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And we've done, Jesse, you are a DM for hire.
Yeah. I still
So, like, how does this work? Like, am I being a hypocrite that I'm okay with, paying a DM for a monthly game, but I'm not okay with paying a DM for a one shot at a convention? What?
I don't necessarily think it's hypocritical. I think if you look at it from a surface level, maybe, but I think it's more, let's say I have 2 games now that are for hire, and another game that I'm trying to sort of get going on my stream that isn't something I'm charging people for, but I'm expecting them to show up because it's content that I am choosing to produce. So I'm still of the mind that if you are being charged by a DM, you should expect a certain amount of fun, enjoyment, entertainment, things like that.
No,
And
professionalism,
right? Like the DM
preparation.
exactly. Yeah. The DM should also want to give that because they're charging. I am super uncomfortable and awkward when it comes to like money exchange. Like if somebody at a table forgets to pay me 1 week and I have to text them and be like, hey, you didn't pay, like it takes me like 20 minutes to send that text message. It's like awful. Sure. But I understand that everybody's time is valuable, including my own. And that is double for people who go to conventions and host, for as many games as you're playing, that DM is running. Like sometimes if there's 3 blocks a day, they're going to run 2 games at least and have maybe 1 block to go eat and do their own thing. But for the most part, if they're, a dedicated DM or a GM for this kind of thing, they're game mastering the entire week. And when you only, it feels a little bad to say, but if you only get your hotel or if you only get your entry into the convention, there's still a large amount of like volunteerism, which some people, like I've done it before, some people really just enjoy playing the games, and that's how they like it. But it's a totally different atmosphere. You've got screaming people all around. You've got to be there on time. People are expecting you. You've got people over your head who are, telling you to be at your table when to be there. And there's a little bit of like, okay, well, I really wish, I was getting a little bit of kickback from the people at the table so that I could afford like a good dinner at the end of the night or something like that. It's really ugly. It's icky. Like as a person,
it is ugly, right?
Right? Like as a person who DMs and actively charges people, and as a person who like sets up booths at conventions, or a person who goes to conventions, like if I'm selling my art at a convention, I don't want anybody to be charged admission into that event, because that's less money that they're going to spend elsewhere. But like, the way things are, obviously you have to charge for a big convention like Origins or whatever. But it just feels bad. Like, like where maybe you have a certain budget for fun spending at Origins, and you plan on picking up a couple books for new games coming out, or like, hey, this Kickstarter's out, so I'm going to use that money for this. You are now having to like really pare down your budget because some of your games now cost money, and that doesn't feel good. And honestly, I think it's on the convention to be fronting that. Like, I get the idea of like, you have to pay for your seat, so it's only going to be people who want to be there. So you're going to guarantee that the table gets filled, and somebody's not going to skip unless they're like, dying or sick or whatever. If you just like randomly fill out a time slot, you might not show up and steal somebody's spot. Like, I get that. But I think it's more on the convention to sort of give these GMs better incentives to be there and better rewards for doing what they do, rather than push that on the consumer, because you already have to travel there. And from our side of the country, it's like a half a day's drive or a whole day drive. And then you have to pay for a hotel, you have to pay for food, you've got to pay for your son, you've got to pay for everything else you're doing. It's just another thing that means that you're probably going to play fewer games than you would have if they were all free. Like, and if you multiply that by the amount of people who are there, like, it just seems bad and icky. I don't know.
Well, it feels like you're getting nickel and dimed,
right?
Like, it's like I don't. So my relationship with conventions and my understanding, having gone to them for decades now, is my admission is paying for those games.
Right.
If that's not true, or never has been true, then I've been lied to.
Exactly. And that feels bad too.
Like that's right.
What have you been doing with my money?
What am I paying $80 for?
Right. And it's like that's, the food convenience store or whatever in the venue costs a certain amount for them to open. And it's like, okay, well, what if you didn't have this convenience store thing that charges $10 for a bottle of water, and instead didn't charge people for games, because those things cost like $10,000 to open for the weekend. And it's like, we don't need $50 soft pretzels. We need people to not have to pay to play their games.
Right. Yeah, it's just the economics of it is starting to unravel.
Right.
That's what I'm a little worried about. And I do, as someone who is absolutely okay paying for a well-run role-playing game session, I don't know. I just don't I feel like I already paid.
Right. Exactly.
That, so it's it's the it's inflation has hit tabletop role-playing games.
I'm curious to see like the statistics that will come out of this. And see what they plan on doing in the future.
I mean, I'm going with 4 people, and all 4 of us have a full 5 days of gaming where we're not paying any extra money.
Nice.
On principle. We wanted to see if we could.
Sure.
But then also, because we could, well, why wouldn't we?
Yeah.
I also don't understand, like, one of the things that plagues me a little bit is if you get into this sort of contractual relationship, right? When I go to a convention, I play some dud games.
Right.
I do, but they didn't cost extra. And
Yeah.
I think it's, and I don't, and in some cases I'm like, well, I'm trying this.
Sure.
Right? And
It's a story to tell, whatever.
but if you're paying, like at that point, it becomes kind of the quality becomes subjective.
Exactly.
Right? And I could be like, I didn't enjoy that. I want my $6 back.
And, while you might not do that, there are definitely people who would.
Yeah.
And how do you deal with that?
How do you mitigate that?
Yeah.
Right. And what do you do? Yeah. It feels very yucky and messy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
For everybody. I don't know. So it's ugly. There it is.
But if you're watching, pay your DM, please. At least bring like chips or something. Bring a Mountain Dew.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let us know what you think. Good, the bad, the ugly, 2024. Drop us a note, everyeditionrpg@gmail.com, or you can also find us at everyeditionrpg.com. That's where we have links to all of our socials, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. They maybe have been a little bit quiet, but my goodness, they are going to roar back to life this summer, especially while I'm at Origins coming up in just a couple weeks.
Heck yeah. It's time to loot the body. On today's Loot the Body segment, we are talking about Frontier Scum, a Mork Borg variant. I am like kind of actually really sad that we're not like together in the same room because I can't flip through it. I can't like feel it. It looks like you said it was bound like a book from the 1800s and like,
yeah.
Oh man, that's so cool.
So check that out. It's just, it's just like two hardcover guys and then the sewing.
Yeah.
But no, no outer.
Yeah, like you can see the pages and where they've been like glued or whatever. Like, oh man.
Yep. So Mork Borg is always art forward, right? And always takes a lot of pride. And the successful variants are also art forward as well, right? So this one, in some respects, it kind of starts off and looks a lot like a sort of Sears Roebuck's catalog, right? In terms of, but it's actually laying out the world, right? And talking about, Carcass County, or Carcass Country, which is, where this all takes place.
Sure.
There were two. I backed the Kickstarter, and it was actually a Kickstarter for a repress. The original pressing of this book became very collectible, very hard to get. And so when they did a Kickstarter for the repress, I jumped on it so that I could actually get it at normal retail price. But they came out with two variants. So one is sort of a blood splatter variant, and you can see it says bones, 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 bones.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And the blood, right, splattered on the back and everything.
That's so
and then
cool.
there's the normal version. I think the blood spattered variant was a Kickstarter exclusive, right? It's not any different on the inside. It really is just the cover and some additional blood splattering. The other thing that came with it was, and this again is sort of marrying my interests right now with music and role-playing games, but it came with an LP, and it actually is, it has an adventure inside, and you can use the gatefold LP cover as a DM screen.
That is fantastic.
Right? So I think that is really cool. I have listened to it. Music is not that great.
Oh,
sorry to. I mean, I wish I could. I'm brutally honest.
Yep. Gotta.
But the presentation, the adventure, the idea is solid.
Yeah.
Here. And so Tides of Rot is the name of the LP adventure DM screen going on. And I can imagine my band, Unicorn Dogs, is going to tackle something like that in the future. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I a long time ago, I got into, The Witcher.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I got into the first video game, and with it came like a soundtrack CD, but also like a music inspired by. And this is reminding. I'm curious. Like, do you plan on doing like a Unicorn Dogs inspired by to kind of go with what you're doing with Against the Gloom? Maybe some Frontier Scum
So I like to do, and I've already conceived of. You asked me, so now I'm going to tell you. I've already conceived of an album's worth of songs that basically I'm writing theme songs for, like cartoon theme songs for already existing role playing games.
Nice.
So you take a game like Frontier Scum, and I write a minute and a half jingle, right, that uses the word Frontier Scum right in the chorus or something like that. Take a cue from 80s cartoon theme songs and my love of pop punk, and you're off and running, right? So yeah, that's in the works. I wrote at this point I wrote a song for Swords and Wizardry that I'm very happy with.
Okay.
It's very Ramones style song, and it's a great way to. I think the chorus has a nice way to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons. So I might move that one up on the slate of songs to record.
Nice.
But I am hoping at Origins to show people, Unicorn Dogs and the two songs that we did for the Against the Gloom role-playing game, and maybe drum up some interest or some business in writing songs for other role-playing games.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But back to, sorry to go off on a tangent, but back to Frontier Scum. The basic idea with a Mork Borg game at this point is it's going to be super rules light. You don't actually need the rule book. You can usually get what you need from a cheat sheet or something like that online. Mm-hmm. And so you're buying this because it's an art piece and you want to read it and you want to enjoy the presentation. But it's not going to be a reference at the table.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, just know what you're getting into. But truth be told, as the OSR has coalesced right around, BX and Shadowdark, don't forget about Mork Borg, because Mork Borg is the sort of rules light, crazy cousin.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Of the OSR. And it's not going anywhere either. If anything, that community is just as vibrant and as interesting as it has been. Not much else really to say. I mean, I haven't taken it to the table yet, but I am interested in Mork Borg variants, and I do enjoy playing Mork Borg when I get a chance. And I've run Mork Borg at conventions and stuff like that, and it is a great game. So I'm assuming that this is just as good, just as rules light, just a little bit of a different coat of paint.
Yeah. Typical Mork Borg stuff, but I typically don't like historical or even Wild West type things, unless it has some kind of zombies or magic or something like that.
Sure.
But
and this this says right at the beginning, this game is not a vehicle for you to propagate your racist, sexist, homophobic, and otherwise bigoted stereotypes and tropes.
That's fantastic.
Bam! Just call it out. Don't that's not what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
I love the presentation of it, and when you turn to the page and it looked like an old Sears catalog.
Yep.
Oh man, yep. I died. It looks so good.
It's good. So check it out. Frontier Scum, the acid Western role-playing game. It's for Mork Borgians like me who love it. But again, if you're interested in the rules, they're available for free online.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Just check it out. It's rules light. It's way less rules than Shadowdark or Old School Essentials. So yeah.
Fantastic. It's good to be back. We've had a crazy busy year, and a lot of changes have occurred, but we're still here. I hope that everybody can still enjoy the setup that we have. We're going to be trying to improve that over the next couple of episodes, get things really sort of streamlined. I appreciate everybody for watching and engaging with us. Would love to hear what everybody's been up to, what games have come out. I'm sure that there's some games that have slipped through the cracks in the meantime that we'd like to hear about, like to talk about in the future. So let us know. Let us know down in the comments. Drop us a note over at everyeditionrpg@gmail.com. And Tell us what's up.
I just want to say thank you to everybody over the past year that has been reaching out and clamoring for more. The truth is that the interest in the show is hasn't gone away, and it's ultimately what sort of brought us back. It's like, oh, people still are interested in long form, yakking about games from these two chuckleheads. So, why not?
And I've not stopped playing. I have played fewer new games, but I still play regular D&D and a couple of like Cyberpunk and things like that very regularly. And I still have plenty that I want to talk about. And I still, throughout this sort of break that we've had, I've still wanted to produce every edition. It's just been it's been a little hectic, but hopefully we'll have a good summer.
You bet. Well, it's good to be back. And thanks a lot, everybody.